Hi everybody. Today caregivers are asking for videos about dealing with family dynamics. So today I'm going to give some background about why family dynamics can be so complex, how we learn to communicate within families, and how to balance family concerns with the wishes and needs of aging parents, with siblings and aunts and uncles and extended family members. And last but not least, how to have conversations if they are uncomfortable. How to avoid having unproductive conversations that go nowhere, and managing a lot of family disagreements. If this is your first time here, I'm Pamela D Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker with 25 years of professional experience as a care manager and a professional fiduciary and consultant helping caregivers and aging adults with health problems. Information about me is linked below. You can also go to my website, PamelaDWilson.com. A lot of helpful information there. I do ask you, please like this video, follow my channel, comment below, even if it's just to say thank you for this video. Your participation helps other people find their way here. So let's start talking about family dynamics by talking about how families are different today from maybe the way they were 100 years ago, or even 50 years ago, or 25 years ago. Your family today might be what I call an original family. Parents who married, had children, and went on. Many families today, though, are blended, meaning parents who are separated or divorced, or maybe one died, or maybe they were couples who had children and they never married. And so you have these transitions of one parent with children getting together with another parent with children. And depending on the timing, whether this happens before children are 18 or after children are 18, as you know, the family dynamics can be night and day different. It's one thing to grow up in a household with what I call blended brothers and sisters when you're 3 or 6 or 7 or 12, right? Versus having a parent die and remarry, or divorce and remarry, and you've been out of the household for 10 years or 15 years. You've gone on with your life. You have a career. You have your own family, your own children. And then your parent gets remarried. Or both of your parents get remarried. In a sense, you have a family over here and a family over here. And new siblings over here and new siblings over there. Right? So managing these families with new siblings and aunts and uncles and grandparents can be challenging, especially if your parents don't encourage involvement or set expectations. And so the way that we learn to communicate when we're young is through the communication styles of our parents. Were they good communicators? Were they good leaders? Did they teach us values and how to interact with family? And how did the culture that we grew up in affect that? So it can be very complicated. So in my family, we spent a lot of time with aunts, uncles, cousins, and my grandmother on my mother's side, because on my father's side, there was not a lot of family left. His brother died in a car accident at an early age. His sister got married and never had children. So by the time I was born, my father's parents had already died. There were no siblings. So it was my mother's family that we spent time with. And I was one of the lucky ones. I was fortunate to have only one set of parents who, in my experience, were pretty amazing people. Now, I admit my family situation, it was really different from a lot of my friends and a lot of the culture of my friends who had maybe huge extended families, or maybe their parents got divorced when they were so young and things got very complicated. So parents model communication styles for us, their children. When you look back, was there a way that your family handled disagreements? Was there open communication about everything from A to Z? Money, health, work, day-to-day activities, jobs, sex, responsibilities like taking out the trash. Was there respect for different opinions inside your family and different opinions outside your family? Or was there a lot of, shh, we don't talk about that? Children learn from parents, and then we go on to school, grade school, high school, maybe college. We get a job, we have a career, we get married. So we have all of these life experiences that just come at us. And similar to us, our parents do. Our parents have life experiences, believe it or not, that are more than just having children that make them who they are today. So is it any wonder that adult children and parents who come back together in caregiving situations can have a lot of disagreements? When we look at communication about aging and care needs, many times these conversations are delayed or they don't even happen until some event like a heart attack, grandma falls down the steps, she breaks a hip, until something happens that we have to have these discussions that can be very uncomfortable. Now, the reality is that all of us are growing older day by day, even though some of us may be 20 versus 40, 50, 60, or 70. But growing older means that changes are going to happen, and these may be changes that none of us like. A health diagnosis, a physical or cognitive limitation, memory loss, illness, an accident. Life is as full of as many wonderful things as it is filled with unexpected circumstances. Now, an ideal situation related to aging and family dynamics and caregiving discussions would be if aging parents would start having these conversations within the family when they are between 40 and 50 years old. Now, you might think, well, that's too young to talk about what happens when you're 60, 70, 80, or 90. Well, not really, because having these conversations earlier instead of later allows for a longer runway, a longer road to talk about health and planning. And these are topics that families just find very, very difficult to discuss, especially the financial aspects of paying for care when something's happened and emotions are just like going through the roof. There is a significant benefit for parents in your 40s and 50s to talk to your children who may only be in their 20s or 30s, because they are not thinking about later in life. They are thinking about today. And there's nothing wrong with thinking about today and career and college and getting married and having children and having a wonderful life. Nothing wrong at all. But if that's all you think about and you don't plan for what happens later in life, then you may be experiencing the problems that you as a caregiver are experiencing today. So my question is, why pass down generational problems? Why not pass down generational knowledge to your children and have them pass it down to their children? Because caregiving really is a generational, lifelong event. Parents are caregivers for children. Adult children become caregivers for parents. Spouses become caregivers for each other. And all of us, we become caregivers for ourselves. The earlier we learn how to take good care of ourselves from a health and mental and physical perspective, the better. The earlier we learn about the costs of care and the money that we need to save to have the retirement of our dreams or to be able to pay for our healthcare needs, the smoother life is going to be. So let's talk about the opposite perspective. Your parents need help. Your spouse needs help. None of these conversations were had. None of this happened. And so you're faced with a person who has health problems that result in frequent visits to the doctor, maybe hospitalizations, taking medications, having health care treatments that they never expected and they never planned. None of us ever think that any of this is ever going to happen to us. But the possibility that it will is pretty good. So why not be realistic? I know, no fun. But so you have this person. So now you're in this caregiving role, whether you want to be or not. How do you navigate these family dynamics between the caregiver and the care receiver? That relationship. And then add the relationships of everybody else in your family. Adult children, siblings, aunts, uncles, grandparents, friends of your parents. Part of how caregivers navigate this depends on your communication skills and how close you are to these other people in your life and your ongoing relationships. So like I mentioned in my family, we had a lot of contact with aunts and uncles, so I would have never hesitated to call my aunt or my uncle and say, this is going on with mom or dad, or when are you coming to visit, or how are you, or what's going on, anything I can do for you. That was just part of our family. But that is not how all families work. Some caregivers, a lot of adult children tell me that there's nobody to help, there's nobody to call. And this includes siblings who don't help. This can include aunts and uncles who maybe call for an update, but they don't ask how the caregiver is, or they don't ask if they can help. And so all of this communication that's not with the person who needs care can seem a little bit crazy, right? How can all these people who are family members call the caregiver instead of the person who needs care? That to me creates a lot of extra work for the caregiver. Now maybe the caregiver invited all these phone calls and all this contact and it's getting out of control, which it can be. But what can happen is in families where maybe there's a lot of disagreement and a lot of differences, these little disagreements that happen 10, 15, 20 years ago, they never get resolved, and so they become these bigger and bigger and bigger disagreements that sometimes we don't even remember how they happened, right? But we just know that we don't like Aunt Sally because something happened, or we don't like Uncle Milton because something happened, and we're just never going to talk to them again. So all these family issues where families grow up and grow apart, and siblings grow up and siblings grow apart because of different priorities and values and life experiences, it just happens. Now, there are some families who don't have disagreements, and maybe they don't see each other all the time, but when something happens, they come together and they gather and they help out when needed, and everything just works out right. So there's one type of family situation and there's another type of family situation. The reality is there's no perfect family situations, and we all think that we have to have perfect families. It's not possible. There's no reason also to be embarrassed if you do not have a perfect family. These family dynamics and these differences, they are just part of life that we either sail through, we learn to navigate, or we avoid and we set aside for later. This is a very important consideration for caregivers, to look at your family and how everybody gets along and how you will balance and manage all these different personalities and different styles and family dynamics. So let's talk about different relationships to manage for caregivers. The first one is your immediate caregiving relationship, you and the person you care for. Do you have a good relationship with that person? Not all children have a good relationship with their parents. Not all children like their parents. Nothing wrong with that. It's something that happened in childhood or even later. But many of these children accept the role of the caregiver. So the first priority is to understand what your parent wants, needs, and expects from you. The second priority to understand is, what is your priority? What can you do? What will you do? And what's reasonable for you to do with a parent that you love wholeheartedly, or with a parent that you really don't like? Another consideration for caregivers is, if you have a great relationship with your parents, don't jump in and start taking over their life. because you can start to do too much. And what happens is one of two things. Your parent is going to say, I don't need any help. Leave me alone. Go away. And you're thinking, oh my God, my parent is so stubborn. They obviously need help and they're not accepting it. That's one thing. The other thing is you jump in, you start doing, and it kind of snowballs. And now you're doing everything and you're thinking, oh my God, what did I get myself into? I'm over my parents every evening. I'm there on the weekends. They expect me to pick up the phone every time they call. They expect me to cancel my weekend plans with my friends. You get in over your head. Many caregivers do this. Now, in a perfect world, the goal is to help anyone that you help to do as much for themselves as possible. Do not take over. Don't take away their independence, their ability to do things, their inspiration to get out of bed in the morning. Help them help themselves. The second relationship to manage is with your immediate family. So your immediate family is your brothers and sisters if you have them. How do you do this? You have a family meeting and you say, Mom or Dad needs help. Who can help? Raise your hand. Who can't help? And if you can't help, why not? Or what can you contribute? Talk very openly about this. Don't be accusing. Don't be angry at siblings who can't help out. Just accept their decision and move on. And this is really, really hard for caregivers because you feel like you've taken on all this responsibility and nobody's helping. But the question to ask is, who took on the responsibility? You have to look in the mirror. You took on the responsibility. Your siblings didn't. You made a different choice. And that's a choice you feel like you had to make. Your siblings may feel very differently, and there's nothing wrong with that. Another important aspect for caregivers is learn how to set boundaries. If people in your family, your siblings are telling you what to do and they're not helping, it's like, you can't help, I'm not going to judge you, but you don't get to judge what I do, and you don't get to tell me what to do, and you don't get to suggest what I do. I'm buried in caregiving responsibilities. If you want to make a suggestion, find a way to implement that suggestion yourself. I would love it if you can help, but I don't have any more time and I have no more effort to give. The same goes for extended family. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, maybe friends of your parents, who begin to contact you to ask about mom or dad instead of calling mom or dad or emailing mom or dad or visiting or texting. They may contact you because they see you as that primary caregiver, and you are, but should you be taking on all of these additional extra communication responsibilities that you could simply take yourself out of? I recently had a caregiver who said that it was this person's responsibility to give updates to aunts and uncles. And their concern was the aunts and uncles never called their sibling, who was the parent, right? They never talked to mom or dad. And they never asked like how the caregiver was. Do you need help, caregiver? Is there anything I can do for you? They just wanted updates. Well, in this situation, my recommendation was take yourself out of the middle. Tell them that you're not taking their calls anymore. Give them mom or dad's phone number and their email address and their cell phone number so they can text. Tell your parents, brothers, and sisters that they need to reestablish a relationship with their brother or sister. If you can avoid it, never become a middleman or a middlewoman for family communications unless you create a plan or a system to do this. And so here's how you might look at that. You could invite everybody in the family, either, frequency is up to you, weekly, twice a month, once a quarter. Invite everybody to a family meeting. And you can have your parents be there, have the person who needs care be there so they can speak up for themselves or so that you can answer questions. And everybody hears the same information, so you're not having to repeat things 5, 10, or 15 times. Or you can agree to send out a weekly email to everybody with answers to 3 questions. How is mom or dad better or worse? Is there anything that you need? Is there anything that I need? Be very specific and limit it to short, brief answers again. And it's a no reply email. If they want to know something, they pick up the phone and they call you, or they get on the family call. Because heaven knows you don't need to continue to add work to an already busy caregiver schedule. Because family dynamics and family communications, they can veer off track to become unproductive and toxic and so disagreeable. On the other hand, they can also be very positive. So, focus on the priorities and the needs of the person who needs care. Everything else on the outside, not a priority. Doesn't matter. Maybe somebody else's priority. Let them handle it. Focus on what your mom or your dad or the spouse or the person who needs care needs, and honor their wishes even if you disagree. This can be really, really hard for caregivers. And this is not to say that you shouldn't have ongoing discussions about options and sharing education and information, because you do want to make good decisions. You don't want to be making decisions in a tunnel or in a very narrow path where you're not seeing that there are so many other options out there that exist that you just miss a really great opportunity for something. Because what we have to realize is, with all of us, we deal with the consequences of the choices we made a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. We deal with these every day. So our life today is a cumulative result of our decisions and the way that we think about things and our relationships with people and everybody. So if we want to change where we are today, we have to look at how to do that. Now, with health problems, which is usually the reason aging parents need care, sometimes we can only make changes to a certain degree. A lot of health diagnoses go undiagnosed for a long, long time because we think we're healthy, and that little thing that bothers us, well, it's not so bad, and I don't like to go to the doctor anyway, and oh my gosh, I'd have to take time off work, and I don't have time, and we have a million excuses not to pay attention to our health. And so then what happens is this emergency where we don't have an option anymore not to pay attention to this. So a lot of health diagnoses go undiagnosed, or they go ignored so long that they can't be reversed. Now, we may be able to manage them. We can manage heart disease and diabetes and COPD and asthma and breathing issues. We can manage them to a certain degree. Physical injuries, on the other hand, if you injured your leg or your arm and you just thought, oh, it wasn't serious, I'm not going to the doctor, then you go to the doctor and they're like, oh, you should have been here 6 months ago. We could have done something about it now. You got a hand that's deformed or a foot that just cannot be taken care of, right? So sometimes all we can do is manage. We can't improve, and we have to consider that. So this is kind of when caregivers can get in the middle of all these family opinions and what a parent wants for health and what they're willing to do for their health care and all of that. And it can feel like you are this referee saying, stop, don't say that. No, I can't do that. Yes, I can do this. Wait, let's all talk about this. You're getting all this information is flowing into you, and everybody's telling you what to do. And honestly, there's only so much that you can do. And then sometimes there are just family members who just keep interfering, and you wish they'd go away. This is where you really do have to be strict with yourself about setting boundaries and ground rules. You want to focus just on the issues, the needs, the desires of the person who needs care. Set the emotions aside, set them aside. Because as the caregiver, it's easy to be pulled into the family dynamics, into the swirling tornado, into the swirling hurricane that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you get sucked into the middle. And there's disagreements and drama and conversations that go absolutely nowhere, and you feel like you're wasting time talking to people who are never going to help anyway. So in these instances, it's important to identify interactions, conversations that trigger your emotions, that make you just, you're angry, you're reacting, your blood pressure goes right through the ceiling. So what you want to notice is when someone says or does something and your blood pressure is rising, Can you pause a moment and stop yourself from saying something that you know you shouldn't say or reacting in a manner that you shouldn't? Because if you can decide how to respond with kindness, kindness always wins out. You can learn to take the high road. And this says more about you responding to somebody who is negative or not being nice or who's angry or who's having a bad day. You're just not going to go there. That's not who you are, and that's not who you want to be as a caregiver. So my recommendation in these situations is to realize that your blood pressure is rising, realize that you're upset, and stop. You can delay that conversation by saying, you know what, I have another commitment, I have to go. Can we talk about this tomorrow? I know it's important. I want to talk to you about it, but I can't do it right now. Basically, you're just buying yourself a little time to think about this situation that would have really set you off before, but now you're in a different place of calm and thought and thinking. Separately also, if you're in a situation where you're tired or it's been a long day, you're irritable, impatient, angry, whatever, don't respond to people if you have an option. If you get an email, don't respond right away. If your phone rings, maybe let it go to voicemail. Decide when people get to interact with you if it's not a scheduled interaction or if it's not an interaction that you initiated. Always ask people if they have time. Hey, do you have time to talk about this? Will you have time tomorrow? When can we talk about this? The other thing is never to read minds or assume that people are thinking something, because how many times have we done that? And we're thinking that they're thinking something, and then we talk to them and it's like not even like close. We were maybe catastrophizing that things were so much worse. Or we took something that someone said personally and they don't even remember saying it. These are hard habits to break. It's a hard habit to say, hey, you said that, but what did you mean by that? I'm kind of thinking this, but am I thinking the right way? These are ways to have respectful and mature conversations in a family when family dynamics are just crazy. Be direct in your communication. Feel free to praise other people if they're not there, but never talk about anyone who is not present to defend themselves in a conversation, because everybody has a right to explain their intentions or why they said or did something, rather than to having other people assume that they have bad intentions or they're bad people or evil people. Most people are not that. Most people are trying to do the best they can, just like caregivers. As I mentioned, if you have a difficult topic to discuss, timing and planning can be everything. So rather than just dropping a bomb on somebody to say, well, Mom or Dad, I can't do this anymore, or I think you need to move to assisted living, or something else, right, that's going to upset somebody, think about the conversation in advance. Never do this, okay? How many people have done this to you? They leave a message on your cell phone and they're like, hey, we need to talk. Click. Or they send you a text message, hey, we need to talk. And there's nothing more. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, am I in trouble? Did I do something? What do we need to talk about? It may be nothing or it may be something, but that's not something nice to do to somebody. In family situations where there's a lot of dynamics, be considerate of other people's feelings, even if they are not considerate of yours. Be reassuring. Be honest about initiating a conversation. There's nothing wrong with saying, I'm thinking this is a problem, and it's uncomfortable for me to even bring this up. Can we talk about this factually and set our emotions aside? And then after you have that conversation, it's important to thank the person for talking and to say, well, how do you feel now? Do you feel a little better? Do you feel worse? I feel better. I feel worse. Maybe we need to continue the conversation, but let's keep the conversation open and going both ways so that we have a better relationship, or we can improve our relationship, or we never feel guilty if we have to say no to each other or something, right? And above all of this, through all these family dynamics, and I always say this, I know, create time for you, whether it's self-care or playtime or something that you like. It doesn't matter what that time is, you have to figure out. It could be walking your dog. It could be playing with your cat, getting lost in some documentary about an obscure subject on Netflix, going to see a movie, taking a nap, doing something for yourself. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Do something for yourself every day, because honestly, balancing family dynamics and personalities and everything that comes along with it when you're caring for an aging parent or a spouse or somebody in your family, it can be a huge responsibility and it can feel like a gigantic burden. So the best thing that you can do is find the right balance between helping others help themselves, encouraging people in the family to become involved by you not taking away those responsibilities and that communication. And be transparent, be honest, be kind. I thank you so much for being here. I am Pamela D Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. Please click below, like this video, follow my channel, and comment, even if it's only to say thank you. Your little thank you can help some person out there who is searching for this information find this video. Your participation makes a difference for other people. I'll see you all again soon in another video.